Howdy, howdy, everybody. This is Colin, back at it again with episode 40 of A New Direction. It's kind of crazy to say that it's taken me this long to get to 40 episodes, but I'm happy I'm here. I was gone off the face of the earth for a very long time, really didn't upload anything, and I guess I'll talk a little bit about that in this video, but I'm kind of here to celebrate. 40 is a big milestone, especially for somebody who, does this for fun and has no real aim with it, which might be part of my problem, honestly. But yeah, I think 40 episodes is a pretty big milestone, and so as a result, I've changed up the ambiance a little bit, got the red lighting. I've had blue lighting in just about every episode I think I've ever done of this podcast, save for maybe a few. So, we're going to switch up the ambiance and have a little fun with this one. I think we're probably going to reflect a little bit about the podcast and talk about some other topics, but mostly we're just going to kind of hang out and do the fireside chat kind of thing that is really what this podcast is based around. And we're just going to have a kind of an off-the-cuff episode and talk about some stuff and go off on some tangents and whatnot. But I think that's going to be the goal here for episode 40. Like I said, it took me a long time to get here, and that really just shows a big lack of consistency and probably laziness on my part. There for a while, I just kind of forgot about the podcast, quite frankly. Life happens and things get busy and circumstances change, and, I found myself out of time. And I think I talked about, like, in one of the previous episodes, maybe 35 or something like that, where my whole family had gotten COVID in December of the year prior to that upload. So I guess that would have been 2022 maybe. And that really kind of sparked the downfall, I would say, of A New Direction for me. I got out of the consistency with it and just never really regained it up until present, I guess. I've gotten a couple episodes and videos and stuff out at the time of this going live. So hopefully going to stick with that. Just trying to have some fun with it. And it's really, I guess, my New Year's resolution coming up here to try to do this a little bit more consistently and just kind of have some fun with it. At the very least, it's a good outlet for me to chat and talk and get my thoughts out there. And that's really, I guess, what I started this podcast for. But we'll get into that. As usual, we're going to do the music recommendation, although this might be a bit different. For those of you who haven't seen my Exuvia review, which came out just prior to this video, go check out that album and go check out that video. I go a little bit more in depth about it, although admittedly, I'm kind of just gushing about how good it is and being a fangirl. I just kind of endlessly drone on about how awesome it is, and deservingly so. It is a phenomenal album, and I would recommend it just about to anybody who has any sort of interest in that atmospheric metal sound. It does it in a very unique way and is worth checking out, even just once. If it's something that's not up your alley, by all means, but I think a lot of you will be pleasantly surprised, and the Ruins of Beverast really doesn't get as much attention as they deserve, I think, being that it's a one-man band, and the guy just puts all this stuff together and blows my mind as a fellow solo artist that somebody can just do that. I don't know, it's mind-boggling. But yeah, go check out Exuvia, and like I said, go check out that video if you're so inclined. I actually made a thumbnail for that, which is a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, admittedly, but shout out some online tools that made that possible. But yeah, with that being said, let's kind of dive into the meat and potatoes of this episode. Like I said, A New Direction really started out as a way for me to just kind of talk and vent. And I think I mentioned this maybe in my return podcast where, it started out as just a way for me to talk about my thoughts, my experiences as a young 18-year-old at the time. And, I kind of just had no aim or goal with it. And I guess you might argue I still don't. I just enjoy the process, the sitting down and talking to the camera and talking about all kinds of stuff, man. I mean, that's like I always used to say. I would open the podcast and say, it's a podcast where I talk about anything and everything, or something to that effect. And that's really what it was supposed to be and what it still is. I don't know. I never really had any sort of ambition as far as what I wanted it to become. Obviously, it's kind of codified itself now with the whole face cam and the broadcast kind of setup. But there when I started, man, I mean, it was weird. Like I was just talking and I would put zero effort into anything. I wouldn't edit them. I wouldn't do anything. Like, excuse me. I would just go from the recording process pretty much to straight to uploading. I wouldn't even listen back to them most of the time. And that trend actually continued for a long time. I didn't listen to the episodes prior to uploading, other than the tidbits where I would do editing here and there, throwing in the album covers and stuff like that. Um, I don't know. I don't know why. I guess I just kind of was trying to pump out content, and I was young, and I guess I had a lot to talk about, and that's really where it stemmed from. But it was very interesting to go through that at 18 with no sort of plan, layout, outline, anything really. I mean, those first couple episodes were rough, and I mean, as I suppose most series are when you start them. But it was funny to me, going back and checking out some of those earliest episodes, especially episode one. Like I was talking super slow, and you could tell I was very uncomfortable behind the microphone, and just really didn't know what I was doing. And now I'm just really good at hiding the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. I sit down and talk, and still have no clue what's going on. But I think I maybe hide it a little better these days. But I especially, as somebody who is a big fan of audio, I have a pretty decent home setup as far as audio is concerned. Those early episodes are like near unlistenable. The sound of that microphone was just not it. I believe I had a Neewer NW800. It was like a $30 XLR mic that I bought on Amazon, and prior to that, I had like a Blue Snowball. So I guess my thought process is that I was going from a USB mic to an XLR mic, into an interface. So the quality must be better. And I think at that time, I probably thought it was. I really can't remember much about how that Snowball sounded. I had it for a long time. I actually replaced it because it ended up giving out on me. It stopped working. So, I got my money's worth for sure. But that Neewer was just something else. And actually, you can hear that sound, while maybe not so good for broadcast and this kind of thing. My first album, Lament, was actually recorded with that microphone only. I used my acoustic guitar and like the built-in Reaper plugins to achieve that kind of eerie ambiance. And it worked very well for that. I was actually pretty impressed by the outcome, especially now that I'm like 3 years on from that album and like listening back to it. Besides Convergence, I really do think Lament is probably my best work as a solo artist. Just some of the ideas and stuff I was pursuing and working on were certainly interesting. The sound quality lends itself quite well to that style of songwriting, and it turned out well. I was pretty happy with it then, and I'm still quite happy with it now. I think it's actually probably grown on me a little more. And that kind of, I guess, led into Elegy, where I had upgraded. I got that MXL mic that I used later on. I believe that came about maybe 6 or 7, 8 episodes in. I probably talked a little bit about that at that point. I'll have to go back and maybe throw it up on screen so you can compare the difference. But that MXL mic was certainly a step up, and so I used that to record Elegy. And my goal with that album was really to just one-up myself and do something better than Lament, and I really don't think I did that. I was proud of it when it came out, but I think even then I felt that it was just not quite the same. And, I've learned subsequently, like since then, that you really can't go into a project trying to one-up yourself because you'll never actually get there. So that was kind of living proof of that. I think that both of them are fine albums, I think, as far as, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think they're fine albums, both of them. I think they kind of stand on their own and are unique enough from each other that they can be listened independently and not necessarily have to draw comparisons between the two. But that was kind of my thing going on with that. But yeah, as it relates to the podcast, that Neewer mic, it was just really harsh. I don't know. And that was an XLR mic. Like I was saying, I felt like I was upgrading from the USB mic and getting into the XLR game, and I really don't feel that way anymore. I'm sure that Blue Snowball sounded better. I mean, hell, I don't know. But yeah, that was kind of where it started really with the podcast. Was I was doing that stuff, and I was talking and yapping, and there was no editing, and I was just throwing the album picture just all up on the screen, black bars and everything. Like I was not putting any effort at all into it, and it was just a tragedy, really. And then obviously, we kind of progressed from that into the face cam kind of stuff after I got that MXL mic and I got the face cam. I think that was a notable improvement, certainly. But there again, I felt I was still kind of awkward behind the camera. Got out and was talking and doing my thing, but it took me a little bit of time to adjust and come into my own as a podcaster. And like I mentioned earlier, I still really don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, it's definitely come a long way coming here into episode 40, 3 years on now. Well, obviously 3 years on and off, but it's been 3 years, over 3 years since that first episode came out. And I think if I could see it now, or see it then, well, see how it is now back then, I would probably be very, very surprised just at the way that it's adapted and changed and whatnot. And I appreciate everybody who stuck through those trying times. I'm sure those first couple episodes probably ran some people off, quite frankly. They were just hard watches, and the quality was not there, and just not a lot of effort going into those videos. But here we are, 2024, almost 2025 now, and I think we might have a bit of a more positive outlook. We're not quite on life support like we were back then. But that kind of sums up really the podcast as far as the evolution of the setup and the process and whatnot. Obviously I do more with editing and I tweak the audio and the like, but the premise has always remained the same. I sit here and talk and do my thing, and hopefully that's interesting to some people. It probably won't be to others, but that's okay. Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting to have all those videos out there so I can kind of go back and watch. It kind of serves as like a time capsule in a way. I'm getting to go back and see what I was on about back in the day. I don't necessarily remember all the nitty gritty details from those eras. I know it hasn't been long ago, but it's cool to kind of have a documented timeline of my thoughts and opinions and see how they've adapted and changed and stayed the same in some cases. It's a cool thing to be able to go back and see myself and hear myself talk in the past. And I think that really touches on the value of things like YouTube and other video sharing platforms. You kind of get to document the past, and that's the value too, just in general. And this ties us perfectly into the next topic, which is my love of history. We have the ability to document the present so that in 3 years in this case, or 5 or 10 or 15, we have the ability to go back and look at what was going on and see how life was going. And that touches there, like I said, on my love of history. I'm a huge history nerd. It's kind of probably irritating to some people in my life how much I love history, because I literally sit and talk about it just endlessly with my parents, with my girlfriend, with my brother, with everybody. It's something that I really talk a lot about. And I may have mentioned this in the past or one of the previous videos, but my thing with history is, like, I feel like it's the best teacher that we have. We have all of these different means of acquiring knowledge, and I think history is the best teacher because history tends to repeat itself, and if it doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Things happen in very similar ways and pan out, and I think we see that a lot. But particularly for me, I love to learn about like the Roman history. I think Rome, we are arguably still living in a world that was built on the foundations established by the Roman Empire. Their form of government, their law, their politics, their art, stuff like that. We still see that stuff today. Look at the Renaissance, for example. They were doing the marble statue things that the Greeks and Romans were doing over 1,000 years prior. That there was a resurgence of that kind of art and music and stuff like that. I mean, there's definitely a lot of influence there as well. Rome is fascinating to me. I think that being that it was such a long spanning civilization, we have a time probably starting in the 6th or 7th BC, I want to say, going all the way into the 1400s AD. That's kind of crazy to think about, and some could make the argument, after the Western Roman Empire fell, it was kind of a different thing. But regardless, if you asked those Byzantine people in the 1300s, they would tell you they were Romans because they were living in the Eastern Roman Empire. So, whether or not it's in the West or in the East, I mean, it's still the Roman Empire. It's still the land that was conquered and taken over and was ruled as Roman for that time, So to have such long spanning control, but also the fact that we just have a lot of firsthand information from that time, writers and philosophers and stuff whose work still survives into the present day. I think that's awesome. We can really peer into the minds of these people who lived well over 2,000 years ago, at least from the, start of the empire time. It's incredible. And there again touches on the history, like as a teacher thing, because we're still able to learn about the philosophical ideas of these people that lived that long ago. They wrote it down and we still have it. So it's cool to be able to ponder those things. But yeah, I think I could really go off on a long, long tangent about this, but I don't have to because I'm actually planning on doing a trilogy kind of video series about Rome, starting with the foundations there in Italy, specifically the city of Rome, and then going through the Republic era into the Empire, and then ultimately the collapse of the Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire in the 1400s that ultimately was its death knell. So look forward to that. I'm not going to give a timeline as to when it will be uploaded because I haven't really scripted anything yet, and I really want to make sure I've got my research in a good spot before I start recording that. But expect to see that in the future. I think it will be a cool little series and will allow me to go off on this tangent, but in a good way. Not me sitting here boring y'all to tears because I talk about Rome for 45 minutes. But yeah, history is just a fascinating thing to me, and obviously you have the Romans, but you have civilizations prior to that as well. We have the Greeks, the Egyptians, and then prior to that, the Akkadians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians. And then you even have like prehistoric civilizations as well. You have the Göbekli Tepe stuff, which is arguably just a game changer as far as our understanding of our past. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Göbekli Tepe is an archaeological site in Turkey that, it's old. It's like 10,000 plus years old, and it's got megalithic art, rock carvings and pillars and stuff in it. And, until its discovery and study, I really don't think people thought that humans were really capable of settling enough to do that kind of thing. There was the whole hunter-gatherer society kind of thing, and while that was true and was very much a real thing at this time, it's clear that there were some groups of people that were capable of creating such structures. So that kind of moves the clock back a little bit as far as our understanding of our past and that kind of thing. So I think perhaps there may be some even bigger and older discoveries there in Turkey or in other places. Turkey seems to kind of be a hotbed for these kind of discoveries, and so I'm sure that's where a lot of the focus will be at. But, we also have the Mesoamerican civilizations that are very old and still trapped in the Amazon that we're just now discovering with like LiDAR technology and that kind of thing. If you've never read about that, you should. LiDAR technology is incredible. Really allows us to peer behind the canopy of the Amazon that's so dense that nobody can actually get there, and we can map buildings and streets and all kinds of stuff there. It's cool stuff. Archaeology is a big passion of mine as well. I'm actually just finishing up with an archaeology class in college, and it's cool stuff. I enjoyed every second of reading that textbook, which a lot of people don't like to read textbooks, and me included, so to be able to say that is a pretty big deal. But yeah, history will definitely be something I think that appears more on this channel just because I love to talk about it and ponder it. I'm not even opposed to pondering and thinking about perhaps ideas that would be considered fringe or pseudo archaeology or whatever. The ideas of like Graham Hancock, for example. While I don't necessarily lend credence to it, I think they're very fascinating thought experiments where you can sit here and think about like these incredibly abstract and possibilities that while no evidence exists, you could make the argument that there might be truth to it. And I think that's just what those types of ideas lend their credence on. But I think it's cool to be able to ponder those things as well. So I don't know. You might see that kind of stuff on the channel as as a thought experiment, but I would definitely advise to stick with our evidence-based understanding, at least until evidence comes out to contradict it. Who knows? But yeah, history will be a big thing on this channel, I think. So that kind of covers that idea, that topic. I guess next I put down here that I wanted to talk about the 6th generation Z06 Corvette, the C6. I don't know why necessarily. It's a dream car of mine, probably my number one dream car at this time. But it's an incredible piece of machinery. I have a buddy that has one. I talked about that I think in 38. He's got a heads cam intake, full built Z06, and it is just a monster. I mean, it is the fastest car I've ever been in. And to have a 7-liter naturally aspirated motor that is able to put down that much power reliably, is just insane to me. And obviously, you had the issue with the valve guides being a problem in the stock motor, so it kind of gives you an excuse and a reason to do heads cam on that car. So you're pretty much, you're paying out the wazoo for it, but you're getting like huge horsepower gains. His puts down right at 600 wheel, which is over 100 more than was rated at the crank, and he's doing that to the wheel. I think that's impressive stuff, especially, like I said, being a naturally aspirated motor. And that's not to say either. You can put boost on them. You might want to sleeve the block or do a dart block or something like that. But, throw a Pro Charger on and you're probably making close to 1,000 wheel horsepower out of this car. And it was made in 06. They started building the Z06s in 2006, and they're still just as relevant and potent today as they were when they came out. That's incredible stuff. And, for the longest time, I was a big Ford fanboy, and I made that pretty clear on this podcast, I think, talking about my love of Mustangs and the fact that I've owned 3 Mustangs by this point. But I've really kind of converted to the other side. I'm not going to lie. I think Chevrolet is on a pretty... I wouldn't go so far as to say they're on like a higher plane than Ford. I think Ford has some really cool stuff, especially with the GT350 and the flat plane crank stuff. But seeing what GM, especially GM Performance, is putting out, prior to its axing, they had the Camaro, the ZL1, which had the LT4 motor, the supercharged, 650 horsepower and 650 torque, crank rated, obviously. But you had that was also shared, an engine power plant that was shared with the Z06 from the C7 generation. But just the potential of those motors is wild. Obviously, the LT series stuff is a little bit more difficult to modify and more expensive. It doesn't have the same wow factor that the LS platform stuff does, but I don't think that discredits it in the slightest. And then obviously you had the C6 ZR1, which is still to this day like the monster of GM performance, I would say. They've done other cars since then. The C7, Z06, and ZR1 were incredible cars. And then now we have the C8 stuff. The Z06 is a monster with that 670 horsepower flat plane crank V8. And then obviously I think they very recently, started releasing, I don't know if people actually own them yet, but the C8 ZR1, twin turbo, over 1,000 horsepower is pretty nuts, especially to be a factory car on pump gas. But I think the C6 ZR1 is still like the nemesis of many people and would be the car that I said that the Z06 was my dream car. I should refine that and say it's like my attainable dream car. The C6ZR1 would be my dream car, especially a heads cam intake Kong performance blower on that thing. I mean, they're ridiculous. The videos online of people racing those cars and just driving them is just ridiculous. Like, it's unfair. It's like having a cheat code. The performance potential and the headroom of those engines, the LS9, is just on a different level, even to this day. I think the ZR1 came out in 2009. So, we're looking at a car that's 15 years old at this point, and it's still like competes with modern supercars. I mean, that's ridiculous. So, yeah, all of that tangent to say, I have definitely switched sides. I have no shame in admitting that. And I would love to have a C6Z06. I envision having a black one, a murdered out one, dark tint, lowered. Well, I think you can lower them on the stock bolts, but lowered heads cam intake, catless headers, probably a Corsa valved exhaust on there, or perhaps the stock MPP valved exhaust. I think they're pretty sweet. And maybe a drag pack on there for fun, but I would daily drive the hell out of that car. I mean, I would straight up just drive that thing everywhere. I mean, the gas mileage would be horrendous, but there's a shop here in town that would do all the work and tune it for me, and you can get the C6Z06 in the, I think, high 30s, low 40s right now. So, I don't know. And I think as the C8 stuff comes out, I'd like to think maybe people will be more inclined to jump to that platform for its newness and the warranty and that kind of thing. So we might see more C6Z06s on the market for a lower price. But on the other side of the coin, the LS7 is such a coveted and legendary engine that I think the prices may go up as well. So if I'm going to get one, I better start making more videos and making them fast. I think that's really what it ends up at. But hopefully one day I'll be able to drive one or own one and be able to build it as I envision. But yeah, that was a long tangent. I don't even know if I breathed that much during all that talking, quite frankly. We're coming up here on the 30-minute mark. This might be a bit longer than usual, but the last topic I really wanted to talk about, and this is actually something I'm planning on probably doing a video on its own, is aliens, extraterrestrials. I'm fascinated by this kind of stuff. Obviously, a couple weeks ago we had the congressional hearing with some notable UFO figures. Lou Elizondo was there, who claims to have been part of a secret CIA group that studied, or task force might be a better word, that studied UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. And they've released videos and stuff. I know the Pentagon released the Tic Tac video and that kind of thing. So aliens are definitely not as taboo or as fringe, I don't think, as they once were, but I think we're going to need some more evidence really to make a concrete claim. I think a lot of the stuff that we see could be argued to be some kind of experimental secret technology. I mean, obviously DARPA is way ahead of the consumer market as far as the technology available and what they have to operate with. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the stuff we see is government technology, domestic or foreign for that matter. But I'm very fascinated by this subject. I just find it hard to believe that perhaps in this huge, huge universe that we live in, that we are the only living life forms. I don't necessarily think life has to look like us at all. In fact, I would probably say it looks nothing like us. It could be very much microbial. We might be looking at bacteria or germs on other planets or moons that would be considered life. But as far as sentient life, I think that's also a possibility as well. I know a lot of people think that we've been visited by aliens, and that's why we see all this crazy technology, and perhaps the government has reverse engineered or found a way to utilize technology from crashed craft to build the stuff that we see or whatever. But I'm kind of iffy on that. I'm not going to discredit it or discount it. I think it's very possible that if aliens are out there and they're intelligent, I think it's possible they visited us. I mean, why not? I mean, we go to the zoo, right? We have animals and stuff who are less sentient or less intelligent. I'm not trying to hate on animals or anything, but we have them in enclosures and that's the life that they know, and we go and gawk at them. So, I mean, perhaps there's aliens out there and we're just a zoo to them. They come and observe and do their thing and then they leave, or maybe even try to interact. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not, I don't lean too far either way. I think anything's possible. But we definitely need some more concrete evidence to make any sort of conclusion as far as aliens are concerned. But, I don't want to say too much about this because I do plan on doing a video on its own about aliens and extraterrestrials and that kind of thing. So until then, I think we will probably be just sticking with what I had to say there. I don't want to give away too much. I've got to be able to make that video because I've got to be able to buy that Corvette. So, I don't know. I think there's a lot of possibilities as far as space is concerned, and I definitely think that the final frontier perhaps is an accurate descriptor, or at the very least, it could be the future. I know we have certain people. I think Elon Musk has talked about wanting to colonize Mars and that kind of thing, and I think space is probably the future, but I don't think our technology, at least as far as what is available in the consumer market, is really there yet. So I think that we're just going to have to kind of keep a lookout on that and maybe give some updates in the future as more stuff is released. But yeah, that congressional hearing that happened a couple weeks ago, go read about that. It was pretty interesting. Interesting stuff posited, but obviously it's hard to trust the government, especially given the current global climate and the fact that aliens would be a good way to get people's attention away from other issues. So with that being said, I think that'll probably conclude this episode. Draw from it what you will. But yeah, I mean, we're 40 episodes deep here, and I appreciate everybody who stuck around and all the new people as well who have decided to subscribe and are enjoying the content. I enjoy making it, and I do hope to continue here on my Tuesday, Thursday schedule. And hopefully we can really try to grow this some more and just have some fun with it. I mean, that's really what it's about. Obviously, I joke about buying a C6Z06. I don't necessarily believe that YouTube's going to be the way to do that, but it'd be nice. I mean, it would be a nice way to do that, but, I do it for fun, and I have fun with it, and I think it's enjoyable to sit and talk and kind of have some more off-the-wall discussions. So with that being said, I think that'll conclude this episode. I appreciate you all for watching episode 40. It's a big milestone. And let me know if there's any suggestions or stuff that y'all would maybe want me to talk about as well. I read all the comments that I get and respond as well. So if there's anything that piques your interest and I could provide some input on, by all means, leave it in the comments. But yeah, I've been Colin. This was episode 40, and I will see y'all next time. Take it easy.